Breaking news, and it's not good. It's what we all expected. Jayson Tatum, torn Achilles, devastating moment in last night's Celtics-Knicks game. The Knicks now up 3-1 in the series, but this has ramifications beyond just this playoff series. This is going to be a big, big thing for the Celtics going into next season. And I'll tell you what, the Celtics are about to look very, very different heading into next year. I'm Trevor Lane. This is the Basketball Bulletin. Make sure you subscribe right here to the channel. Joining me is Donnie Freeman. Donnie, look, I make no bones about it. I do not like the Boston Celtics. I'm a Lakers fan. That's it. I never want to see this. I don't care who you play for. I don't ever want to see a player getting hurt like this, and especially a talent the level of Jayson Tatum. Absolutely devastating. Now he's out for obviously the remainder of this season. We're also probably talking about Jayson Tatum not playing next season either. This is absolutely brutal. I don't want to see that happening to Boston.
In all seriousness, yeah, you don't wish that on anybody. So
no.
Prayers up, of course, for Tatum, and hopefully he comes back better than ever. But this has a lot of implications for the Celtics. Big time, because of the way that their roster was already getting talked about, how they're going to have to potentially move some of these guys. And they knew this would happen when they signed all these deals. But yeah, this is not great.
Okay, so let's start though with this series. Right now it's 3-1 in favor of the Knicks. Is the series over effectively? Is Tatum now he's out? The Celtics no longer have him. Is the series over between the Celtics and the Knicks?
It was probably the second he went down, it was definitely over, but it was probably already over because they weren't probably going to lose that game. So yeah, I think it's done. I mean, they may win one more, but I wouldn't be surprised if they come out deflated after the news comes out from this and all that stuff. So
that's just it. When I look at this series and I think about, okay, for the first two games, we saw the Boston Celtics shoot horribly from three, right? 25% from three in two consecutive games, in games 1 and game 2. And he thought, okay, well, all the Celtics need to do is regress to the mean. That's it. That's all they need to do. Shoot decent from three, and they win. And that's what happened in game 3. Game 3, they were great. And so they won, but then the Knicks, to their credit, battled back in game 4, and now they have a 3-1 series lead. I think there was still, had Tatum been healthy, there's still the potential that the Celtics just shoot 40% from three for 3 straight games, and they could still win the series. Is it likely? No. But now without Tatum, I think that's a wrap. I think that's pretty much it. In fact, my guess is that this thing will be done here in game 5. Well, game 5's back in Boston, though.
Yeah, I was just thinking they'd be deflated from losing him. That's the way I approached it. They just might want to get this over with, and I couldn't blame them.
No. And I'll say this: I wouldn't shock me if it does. I'll say I won't go past game 6. I think it's possible for the Celtics to come out hot and win game 5. I don't think it goes past game 6. So I do think effectively the New York Knicks are going to move on here, but obviously that's a disappointment for Boston. That will be now what I believe 6 straight years that will have had a new NBA champion that the previous champion did not repeat. That's the parity that the NBA has been looking for. But now the Celtics are going to face some very difficult questions here because this team's going to get very expensive. We talked about it. As presently constructed, this team's going to cost $500 million when you add in taxes. Billion with a B, like the most expensive team we've seen. So if they are a second round exit and you don't have Jayson Tatum next year, that's, I think, Celtics ownership, they're not going to be willing to pay that tax for a team that frankly doesn't have the ceiling of winning a title. And without Tatum next year, I think that's going to be the situation that they're in. So, Donnie, I think we're going to see significant changes. I think we're going to see salaries dumped from this Celtics roster. They want to get below that second-tier apron. They're going to have a lot of work to do. Who do you look at and say, okay, this guy is probably going to be moved by Boston?
Well, I really think that a few of these guys could be out, right? Like, I think they're going to keep Tatum and Brown, of course. White, sure. But I think there may be a bit of a crunch with the other guys that are making big money. Kristaps and Drew specifically. I'd expect Horford to potentially retire.
Yeah.
So that's just removing himself from the situation. But I think that they're going to try to build around those three and maybe Pritchard. So the rest of the guys are all on the table.
Right now, $20 million below the second apron. I would assume they would not want to be a second apron team anymore. Which
especially
I think
not next season, because next season we haven't talked about it so much yet, but is next season just a wash? Like, what's happening?
Yeah, yeah. I think as far as next season goes, if they don't have Jayson Tatum, they could still be a playoff team.
Yeah,
can,
sure.
Can they be a title contender? No, I don't think so. Not without Jayson Tatum. So I think, yeah, it doesn't make sense to burn a season as a second apron team, as a heavy taxpayer, deal with potentially a pick 7 years from now, getting moved to the back of the first round, not being able to trade that pick, all of the other hurdles that you have if you're a second apron team, not being able to aggregate salaries in a trade and everything else that comes with it. They're not going to want to deal with all that stuff. Most teams look at the second apron as a true hard cap. They will not pass it. That will then be the MO of the Celtics as well, which means they have to clear at least $20 million off their books. But that's, you're missing Al Horford. Luke Cornett is a free agent. Torrey Craig's a free agent. They're going to have some roster spots still to fill. So with that being the case, they've got to clear some significant salary. The guy I look at, it's Drew Holiday. I don't see them moving on from 30-year-old Derek White, but Drew Holiday at 34, 3 years still remaining under contract. To me, that is the prime guy, in addition to perhaps Kristaps Porzingis on an expiring $30.7 million contract. I think at least one of those guys is gone from Boston next year.
Yeah, I think that's a very safe bet. It just depends on who they're talking to. I think there's a chance that both of those guys aren't on this roster next season as well. But I think for sure Kristaps may be a little bit more appealing just because he's a little bit younger and only has one more year as opposed to another few. Like, I think Drew is somebody that you could put on a number of teams and he could just slot in as their fifth guy and be great. He does what he does really well. But I am concerned about him being 34 right now, still having multiple years left on the deal, making 37 in 27, 28. Like, I am concerned about that piece of it. And that's a player option. That could be pretty scary. I don't know. It just depends on how fast the cliff hits him. But to his credit, he's been pretty great. But and Kristaps has his injury issues, but there's a chance that both these guys are gone.
Let me ask you, so you think Kristaps Porzingis has more trade value for Boston than Drew Holiday does?
Yeah, simply because of the expiring contract.
Yeah.
I think that has added flexibility. But there is something to be said about the fact that you have the guarantee of having a guy on your books for X number of years too, if you like that.
I think the trade market will be a wider one for Porzingis. There are more teams that could talk themselves into Porzingis, particularly on an expiring contract. Right? That's low risk, right? And he is extension eligible. Maybe you would extend him, maybe you wouldn't. But then Drew Holiday. I think Drew Holiday, though, the teams that would make sense for Drew Holiday may really want him. If you're a team that's a title contender and you feel like you're a defensive guard away, okay, I could see teams that would really want a Drew Holiday, right? That would really. Now OKC is already stocked with defensive players.
Get Nico on the line.
There you go, right. I mean that's a great point. The Dallas Mavericks, Kyrie Irving is out till January.
Get him on the line.
Would Drew Holiday be a great fit for them? Now, obviously, you're not giving up the number one pick, but if you could get Drew Holiday in Dallas, because he's a guy who could play with Kyrie or play in place of Kyrie until then, has
chemistry with AD too from the Pelicans.
Boom, there it is. See, there's teams that could talk themselves into Drew. So I don't think Drew has no trade value. I think he just has a more of a narrow market because there are teams that would be interested in Kristaps that would not be interested in Drew. Either one of those guys could be moved. Al Horford, probably just retires. That's probably. I don't see them moving Jaylen Brown. They're obviously not going to move Jayson Tatum or anything like that. But the other one that I think teams will test the Celtics on, it's Derek White. I think they will do everything they can to not move him, but I think teams will try to initiate the conversation on Derek White. The Celtics will try to steer that conversation towards Holiday or Porzingis, but I think Derek White is the guy that teams are going to be calling on.
Yeah, he's the guy that I think teams should be really targeting as well. Similar archetype to Drew, just has more offensive pop and is several years younger and makes similar and less money, I guess, all the way through. So he's the guy I would be targeting. And I think maybe you could talk Boston into, if you're going to throw a couple extra assets their way, potentially coming off of him, even if they don't really want to. And Boston could talk themselves into, we've got Drew, we've got Pritchard, we got Shireman, we got some of these guys that we really like that can be guards for us. And Tatum has the ball a lot when he's out there, and so does Jaylen. So you can maybe talk themselves into it if you're Boston. But I think Derek is the guy you need to hold on to. But it's just tricky because next year, I mean, maybe he comes back late, they make a run. I I don't think that's likely, but it's possible, I guess. But I just think that next year you have to kind of just say, well, it is what it is this year. And, we're saying they're not going to trade Jaylen. And I don't think he would request a trade. But this team is essentially going to have, if that's the case, like a gap year here. So I wonder if they say, hey, well, let's just test the market for Jaylen potentially.
Yeah, right. That would be, that's something they could. I always think teams should keep an open mind.
Yeah.
I don't think they will move him. But
no, I don't think so.
But is it something they should accept offers on? Sure, because I think they're going to have a lot of things that they're going to need to be open to this summer. This Celtics team is going to look very different next year. It can't be nearly this expensive. And this is what the new CBA does. It makes you make very difficult decisions when your team hits a certain spending level. And that's where the Celtics are now going to be at. It's the life cycle of a team. Now the Celtics they've won their championship, and now they're probably going to be dropping back down. Again, the series is not over with the Knicks, but I would imagine a second round exit here would mean this team is going to be broken up this summer and will look very different next year. For Jayson Tatum himself, obviously brutal, gutted that he suffered this injury, now out all of next season. And you just have to hope, or most likely out all of next season. And we just have to hope that he can indeed bounce back and find a way to recover from this. Again, guys have recovered from Achilles injury. We've seen, Kevin Durant did it. He's a famous example, but we've seen other players do it as well. But it's going to take some time for him to get back to being himself. So first and foremost, of course, prayers up for Tatum, wishing him a speedy recovery. But for the Celtics, this is probably the end of the run with this incarnation of the team.
Yeah, but the good news is, assuming that he comes back and he's himself, which I think he's got a good chance of doing. Mm-hmm. He's young and all that stuff. I think he'll be fine, hopefully. The good news is they've still got several years. So while we're talking about this run right now, this iteration of the team, that we may be talking about this team a few years from now being right back at the top of things. So we'll see what happens.
All right, everybody, give us your thoughts in the comments down below. Don't forget to subscribe right here to the Basketball Bulletin YouTube channel. Till next time, see you and stay safe.